Yes, right now. Oh my God.
Alimat, you did not tell us I was supposed to put on suit now. I can go and change in the car.
Sorry, please don't kill me.
Wait. Alimat, it's just your best can
Put on suit now. I can go and change in the car.
Sorry, please don't kill me. I'm making this video somewhere. I hate it.
Alimat, it's just your best can
Put on suit now. I can go and change in the car.
Sorry, please don't kill me. I'm making this video somewhere. I hate it.
There's something hey guys. Can you hear me?
Yes, there is a lot of echo.
Salem, go straight to the point. Do waste our time today.
Please confirm that you can hear me. Please confirm that you can hear me.
I just replied because that means I can hear you now.
Yes,
Okay.
my audio.
Salem, go straight to the point. Do waste our time
Okay. Guys, I'm honored to be hanging with you this afternoon. Our topic today, what we're talking about on this channel is the turning point generation. And we're talking about the Gen Z succeed where millennials are failing. Our topic today, what we're talking about on this channel is the turning point generation. And we're talking about the Gen Z succeed where millennials are failing. Can we track where the noise is coming from? Is the noise gone for everybody? Can we track where the noise is coming from? Is the noise gone for everybody? Can we track where the noise is coming from? Is the noise gone for everybody?
No.
No. Is the audio better now?
Yeah, it's much better.
Yeah, the noise is gone. Okay, real quick, what we want to do is try to answer the question: will Gen Z succeed where millennials are failing? And just for the sake of everyone everyone who's watching, who is not among these three awesome people here, I'm just going to run a quick introduction of everybody who's here. So we have Halimat Magaji. She's a digital content creator, communications enthusiast, and lifestyle influencer who has worked with several prominent brands. She has a keen interest in fashion, beauty, women and child rights advocacy, and she's demonstrated this in the development of fundraising projects that she has worked on. So thank you so much for being on the panel, Halimat. Pamilerin Adegoke is a brand influencer and content creator. He's also the convener of Give a Girl Child a Pad, a project he started in 2018 that raised over 500,000 naira and over 2,800 sanitary pads were shared in Lagos and Ibadan, Nigeria. Pamilerin, everybody, he's the one that's kind of making everybody really comfortable and feel like this is just a vibe. Chiedozie is a Nigerian-born poet and playwright whose work is inspired by the journey of finding home, inclusion, love, and laughter. His poems are aimed at endearing people to the beauty in the similarity, and his stories tell of the audacity to be human. Thank you for being here, Chiedozie. My name is Salem King. I'm a content creator, and I'm so honored to be on this table with you guys. So, what do you do? Right? The question we want to answer is: will Gen Z succeed where millennials are failing? So, I found a very interesting thread. Before I start asking you guys questions, I found a really interesting thread on Twitter yesterday, and I feel like you might find it interesting and instrumental to this conversation. I just that it says people born between 1985 and 1995 are the most unique generation of all time. Here's why. They are in between two generations, the one before the internet and technology took over, and the generation after. The generation before us was old school and believed in working hard. The generation after us believes in working smart. We saw it all: radio, TV, Mario, Warp Trick, Nokia, Nintendo 64, Samsung, iPhone, PS4, tape, CD, DVD, Netflix, Snapchat, emojis, virtual reality. The generation before us can be scammed with simple emails asking for money and offering love. The generation after us knows it's better to have four emails: one for serious stuff, social media, financial transactions, and one for experiments and things you don't trust. We are the generation that knows tradition and question it, picking from it what makes sense to us. The generation before us knew no questions. The generation after us knows no tradition. We are the gap between the industrial age and the internet age. We understand both sides from experience. We should be running the world. The old guys don't understand what's going on anymore. The new guys don't fully understand where what's going on came from. If you enjoyed, okay, I'm just going to stop there. I think this is like an interesting start to this conversation. From what I know about everyone who's here, we're all born within that time period or close to that time period. So you're all qualified to be here by nature and also by contribution, right? So Chuba is here. I'm just going to thank you, Chuba, for coming. Chuba Ezekwesili is an economist, a data analyst, and the co-founder of Akanka, a multidisciplinary design studio. I love your hair, man.
Thanks, man.
So, first question I have for you guys is, why do you think this question is even coming up? The question of, will Gen Z succeed where millennials have failed? What's the difference? What's the difference between the two sides? What do you think is the difference between the life or the reality of someone who is Gen Z and someone who's a millennial, and why is this question even coming up, that will this one succeed where these ones have failed? What are your thoughts? Chiedozie, you want to go first?
Okay, so I feel like first of all, you asked them the difference between like the millennials and Gen Z, and I think the second question is why this conversation is coming up, correct?
Yeah.
All right. So first of all, the difference between the millennials and Gen Z, I think, or in my opinion, is simply information. Then we are limited to the sources of information we could get. For example, if your mother, as a girl, your mother told you if a boy touches you, you get pregnant. Like, that was pretty much the only information you had. You couldn't ask your father about those types of things. And with the Gen Z, they literally had Google, they had social media, they had all these other sources where they could easily go and find out, oh, is it just touch or is it more than touch? And then they could do that, but we couldn't. And I think that's just the difference. At its core, that's the difference between the millennials and Gen Z. Why we are having this conversation now? Initially, when I heard this, like when I saw the topic, will they succeed or fail? I was like, I'm sure, of course, yeah, why not? Like, no brainer. But then I started asking, like, down, okay, where is it that we failed? What did we do or what didn't we do, or things like that? And will they do anything different? And I think it's when you start dissecting that level of information or that level of questioning, then it's I mean, let's just say that we'll talk about it more as we go. But I think, yeah, we really need to have these conversations and have it very often.
Yeah. Family.
So for me, I feel like Chidudi said, it's basically information. And the fact that we know better and we learn from our parents' mistakes, we know what they've done and what they've done wrong, and we basically can speak up. So we are not in this generation, we are not scared, and we are ready for new challenges. And I think that is why we are different. Again, so if the government is telling us this, we know the right thing from the wrong thing. And we know we have a power, and we know the importance of the power we have. So I think that is why we're different, and that is why we succeed. Not we can succeed, we succeed ahead of our former generation. So that's it for me.
Yeah, amazing. Sure.
Hi everyone. So I'm going to be a bit contrarian here, and start first of all with the topic, because as a designer, I believe that whatever it is that you are doing, you have to be very intentional about how you design it. And even the topic itself you have to first of all start by questioning the intent behind why the framing of a question. So when you set the question up as, will one generation succeed where another has failed? You've already framed it in a way that will require a certain kind of answer, right? Because what it supposes already from the onset is that there has been some sense of failure, number one. Number two, one of the things that we're very particular about when we design is starting from a place of gratitude. And we believe that that's key to anything that you're designing. You can't design effectively if you start from a place of criticism or focusing on what hasn't worked and what has failed, but starting from what you're grateful for. So how I would redefine that question would be, what exactly has the millennial generation done that the Gen Z can build up on? Because that way you have a way forward versus focusing on what hasn't worked. Quite not very important, and just in terms of the clarification of that question, because it's very important for a very particular reason. And I think this goes back to the conversation around how being in a generation that has one generation has seen a bit of the past generation and a bit of the internet generation. And what you realize is those two generations have the blessings to offer. One generation, right? One generation was a generation that understood history, that has seen history, that has understood more about life than we have, right? Mm-hmm. Your parents, no matter what, know more than you. That's just the truth. They saw Abacha's era, they saw everybody else's era, they've seen military era. Most of us were born around the time where we were kids when Abacha died or something. Most of us were not even born. Some of the Gen Zs were not even born. So you don't have a conceptualization of what it feels like to live in that kind of situation. Now, the new generation is born in the internet, so they have access to information. They're able to move fast, all of those good things. But guess what? They don't have that history. Now, what happens when you start framing it according to whether it's been a failure or not is you don't focus on what exactly the benefits of each generation is, and it's very important that you do so. Because that gratitude will put you in a place where you're able to see what do we learn from the previous generation, right, which is the history. Now, what do we also learn from the new generation, which is information and questioning. And that intersection, right, is where the future is at for us. So it's important that we sort of reframe that questioning in the first place, so that way we have a more productive conversation. Thanks.
Thank you for that interesting perspective. Halimat, your thoughts?
Okay, so first things first, I believe that I think I'm in between what Bamilare and Chidozie said and what Ezekwesili said. So now I believe that first things first, the honest truth of the matter is the millennial generation, while I was doing my research on the statistics and the facts, the millennial generation is a tad bit similar to the Gen Z generation. However, there are differences. Now, when he says that, first, one of the first things I'll disagree with is when he says that we were not able to experience, so we cannot particularly say how it was like for them and whether they failed. The honest truth of the matter is, one thing I've learned from my experience in life is you don't just learn, you don't have to particularly experience to learn. You can learn from other people's stories. You can sit down and learn. A very good way of that is by, for example, now, if I want to build a government that's separate from the Nigerian government, as the Nigerian government go different, I would have to go through the past governments to see where they made mistakes, see where they were good, see where they did wrong. I don't necessarily have to have the experience of that government to be able to create changes in that scenario. So that is exactly what I mean. Now, with regards to the term of millennials failing and Gen Z taking up the seeing whether Gen Z would do definitely better than millennials. The honest truth of the matter is, I won't particularly say millennials failed, but I would say that there is a drastic difference between the Gen Z, the urge, the fire, the willingness to do more between the Gen Z and the millennials. That is one thing that I would definitely say. Then another thing that I would also like to say is that the honest truth of the matter is, with regard saying, the honest truth of the matter is, in as much as we are a new generation, because I fall into the Gen Z generation, in as much as we're a new generation and we are more present, we also need the knowledge of the millennials. We need the help of the millennials in creating a turning point. So we can't do it by ourselves. But if you're looking at the Gen Z on its own, then I would say that we have a bigger chance than the millennials did, because we are more radical, we are more liberal, we are more open to new things, we are more innovative, we are more independent. So yes, definitely, that is my standpoint.
Yeah, thank you so much, Halima. You make a very interesting point when you said that it's possible to learn from the experiences of others. Would you say that members of the Gen Z have, would you say they have that virtue of empathy where they're able to learn, where they're able to take the information that comes from a generation they didn't belong to and leverage it for the development of the now? Would you, if there's anyone who has thoughts on that, I want to hear. Yeah.
Can I go?
Yeah.
So just a clarification. When I say you need the experience, I'm going to hop off on your analogy. You still needed the experience of a government that existed for you to create a new one. That experience doesn't mean you needed to literally be in their shoes. It means you needed to have some information. Their experience is what creates that information. So just that clarification there. Now, the question for us, right, which you asked, Salah, is does Gen Z did they actually slow down enough to give gratitude to the energy that came before them? That's a question. I can't answer that question. But the one thing I know about, say, our generation and even the Gen Z generation is we move fast. And while moving fast can be a virtue, it's also a flaw. Because many times you move fast and then you assume that those before you didn't know anything. What did they know? What did they do? They're not explorative. They're not, we get so excited about like how energetic we are, not realizing that generation was just like us at some point. They were our age. They also had their dreams, their goals, they're at the same level of energy, right? And what that means, right, is it's important for us to slow down and start practicing more gratitude, because that's the one thing I find is still exceedingly lacking in our generation, and in both generations, millennial and Gen Z, is a practice of gratitude, of being able to say, am I slowing down enough to understand that there is information that I might not know, and that it's important for me to give gratitude to those who have come before me and who might know more than I do in that specific place, and learn from them in order for me to build the future. Because guess what will happen? We will end up making the same exact mistakes that they made, right? Which is you will go in there thinking that you know it all, burn yourself out, and before you know, you're no longer that. There's now a gen, something else after you, right? Who's going to be looking at you and saying, oh, look at them, they're so old and they don't know anything. That cycle continues. What changes that cycle is the practice of gratitude for those people who've come before you and learning from them and questioning what they've done and improving on it.
So I think I want to chime in here. So I think I want to ask if we're on the same page regarding if or not the millennials. And when the question was raised, like, will Gen Z succeed where the millennials fail? I guess a lot of people had the at the back of their minds, they had, oh, the millennials failed. The millennials, I think failure in itself was like the key thing everybody was focusing on. And to me, it's like the main thing there is the adverb where. And it pretty much just highlights there are places we succeeded and places we failed. And we're not exactly, although in acknowledging what we failed at, we also acknowledge what we succeeded in. But here we're talking about our failure. So will you agree, Chuba, that that sense of ingratitude was also one of the things we failed at? Because a lot of times, especially in the NSAS movement, we found out that, or we actually acknowledged that a lot, the generation before us failed. And did we look at it to say, is there anything they did right that we can piggyback off? Is there anything that they did better? Is there anything that we can learn from that? So will you say that, because I know that that's like where the millennials are actually, like, it happened. So, I mean, is this something that we failed at? And is this something that the Gen Z is going to succeed in? And remember when I said we should have these conversations more and more, because if we don't, we'll probably not know where we failed, and we'll always think that we've got it right every single step of the way.
Okay, I would like to input with regards to your initial question, Salim, and what Chidozie has said. Now, with regards to your initial question, I'm so sorry, Salim, could you repeat it again so that I could?
Sorry, repeat the question.
Yes, please. Your initial question.
Okay, so first of all, we discussed why are we even having this conversation, right? That's what we're talking about. Why are we even having this conversation? And then, you know, Chuba brought up the point of view that, you know, he talked about ingratitude, and then you mentioned that people can learn without having to experience something. So I was asking, do the Gen Z, you know, members of the Gen Z, do they slow down?
Apply empathy. Okay, so I'll be honest with you. I think that the Gen Z definitely apply empathy, in the sense that if you notice, we are the generation that we are fighting for the rights of transgender. We're fighting for the rights of transsexuals. We're fighting for the rights of we're fighting against racial discrimination. I remember today I was having a conversation with my aunt, and then she was like, Bobrisky is it, them, they. And she said it was it initially, then she said she was them. And then I was like, no, she's a she. She wants to be referred to as a she. She's not non-binary. She's transsexual. So, like, we are the generation that do that. And when I was researching, there was a fact that showed, when they did a survey, it showed that a larger percentage of the Gen Z believe that what is right is what will not hurt anyone, or what is fine for everyone. So that definitely shows that we do have empathy. But you see, the thing is, another problem with the Gen Z is we are radical. So the problem with radicalism is the fact that at the end of the day, it is very difficult for you to be corrected as to what is right and what is wrong. We are the generation that believes that this is this. I stand on my point as I stand on my point. It's very difficult to actually correct my generation. I mean, the difference between, because even our parents' generation, they are very difficult to correct. They are not the generation that will apologize to their children if they do something wrong. But the difference between them is, exactly, so the difference between them is although we are more open to knowledge, but then at the same time, when we believe that when the media serves us something, or a larger percentage of the people that accept it, once a larger percentage of people accept your point of view, we begin to stand on it. Do you understand where I'm coming from? So I feel like we do have empathy, but sometimes we need to slow down to listen. Sometimes we need to slow down to be able to observe. Sometimes we need to slow down to be able to see, okay, where is this going wrong? Where is this going right? We need to step back. I mean, look at this whole NSAS thing. we were all going out. We were very agitated. We had so much energy for it. And then I noticed on Twitter when we stopped the night that the Lekki massacre happened and massacre in other parts of Lagos, the Lagos massacre happened. I noticed that people were going on Twitter and they were saying, why are we stopping? We need to go out more. And there was something that Obi said. She said something. She said that sometimes you need to slow down and take a step back. Taking a step back is good because you're able to reorganize. You're able to analyze things and see, okay, this is what we were able to do. We can change it this way. But our generation wasn't willing to step back. We were by fire, by force. We die on the line. We die here kind of generation. So I think we do have the empathy, and empathy is very important. I tell people, you know, when you want to run a set of people, when you want to run a nation, you want to run a government, it's not about the economics. It's not about the economics are important, but the first thing is empathy. You need empathy when running a nation. You need to be able. The most important thing when running an organization or a nation is to protect the citizens and the interests of the citizens. And in order to do that, you need empathy. So I think empathy is important. We have it, but being able to change, being able to take correction and all of that, we need to slow down a bit in order to be able to analyze things and reorganize where necessary.
Thank you. Thank you for everything you've said. At this point, I think it's important for us to now ask, what does slowing down look like? We now realize that we need to partner with, other generations. If you belong to the Gen Z, you need to partner with millennials. If you're a millennial, you need to partner with the Gen Z because you need their energy and the drive and that fearlessness. If you are a millennial or a Gen Z, you need to partner with the boomers because you need their experience, you need the foresight and all of that. So what does slowing down look like within the context of, these different generations of people that want different things and have had different experiences and, want to approach one thing, but in absolutely different ways? Now we find that we need to work together. What's that supposed to look like?
Basically for me, I feel it's collaboration. That is what works. We realize that this is what we want, and thank God our older generation, they know that, oh yeah, these guys are ready to speak up, and they're actually speaking up, and they're actually fighting for the right thing. You get it? So now it's not left for us to be able to come to terms that, okay, this is it. We know we all have our differences, we all have different approaches and the rest of it, but we need to come together to find one voice. Because the moment the Gen Z or the millennials are going this way, we are going that way, we all end up where our parents ended up. Nothing is going to work and nothing is going to happen. But the moment we realize that just all what we need right now is put our differences together, put the pride and I'm the older generation, I know better, we've been here, we've done been there, done that, and we decided to come together to do one thing. Without that, we are still going to end up where our parents ended up. But the moment we come, because to be honest, we need each other's voice. We need help from each other. Our parents, they know better. They've done this before. We know the right thing to do because this is what we want, and we are not backing out. So we need their energy, our energy, and the energy of the generation to come, put together, and let them like this is what we want, and we are not backing out. Not until then, nothing is going to happen. Because if we keep going left and right, these people are going left, these people are going right, we will end up where our parents ended up. I won't say they failed. They done their best. They just couldn't do. Just couldn't get results. But we know that this is it, and we're going for it. Hopefully, by God's grace, we'll get to our destination. That is it for me. Cooperation.
Amazing. Does anyone else have to? I think everybody has to have something to say about what that is going to be like, what that collaboration, what that coming together. Where do you think we can start?
Permit me to make a bold statement. I think the millennials from the three generations, the ones before us and Gen Z, I think the millennials are probably the smartest people right now. I'm saying that because we experienced the change. The introduction of internet and information to everybody everywhere is beyond us. It's not a small change. And we experienced that transition. So if we were exposed to certain information that wouldn't have been easily available from Spain to Nigeria for the people, for the generations before us, or from Australia to Nigeria, or wherever to Nigeria. For the people before us, we were exposed to that, and we saw that, and our parents didn't curtail us. I remember going, like, opening my email address by myself, my first email address by myself. My parents didn't have to help me to do that. They didn't even really bother with that. They were like, oh no, this is another phase, it will pass, or technology, what that. But like, we were the ones that took it upon ourselves, and in that we became smarter in a certain way because we were more exposed. And now the Gen Z after us, they haven't experienced what we're experiencing right now, and they will become smarter eventually when the generation after them, take their place. So in saying that, for us, and when it comes to like building something, we have to take context into, like, take everything into context. What I'm saying is, if we're coming together to build a better Nigeria, then we have to say, with our own almighty wisdom and all the bold statements I've made, do I think my idea is the best for the future of Nigeria? I don't think so. I think I have to, in the context of stepping back, I think I have to step back and ask myself, what exactly is the better for Nigeria? What exactly is the best thing for Nigeria going forward? And I have to realize that it is what the Gen Z says is best that I would accept is best. Because then I have to think, am I living in Nigeria good for me, or am I living in Nigeria good for them? And so I have to bring my wisdom into play here to say, you know what, with all I know, I need to see what they see. I need to hear what they know. I need to be able to interact with them. So it's a combination of previous generations, the millennials, the Gen Z, everything working together to create a future, a better future for Nigeria, for them. Now, if we're talking in another context of, say, we want to maybe do something for a present and not something that will last long, then I think I think people should put millennials in the forefront, because pretty much we are the now. Yeah.
Amazing. Any other perspectives?
I keep disconnecting in and out, but I'm loving. I feel like just in the flow of the conversation, I feel like everyone is sort of aligned into this understanding that it will require sort of the increase of every generation to carve a way forward. It's just, I think it almost sounds common sense, but sometimes you need to sort of have a conversation around that for everyone to be on that same page. So I'm really glad about that. I think the next question, which I think you asked, Salim, was, what next? What does that look like? And I mean, I think for one, NSAS was an opportunity for us to see what that was, something like that looks like. I mean, it was of course a very millennial, Gen Z, combination, and that led to stuff like NSAS. I do think that what would have been important would have been for us to still then, of course, integrate the support of the previous generation as well into such a cause, and because that really would have helped. At the end of the day, right, the question you have to ask yourself is, am I if I'm fighting a war, right, am I going with as much ammo as I can? Do I have like as many people in my army as I can? And that's really the most important thing, because at the end of the day, right, it's whoever has like the bigger amount of power that will win it. That's just the truth. Like, we can talk about justice and equality and everything nice and cute, but see, the world runs on energy, and you have to come through with like the most amount of energy. And if you're only limiting it to one generation, or you're just limiting the amount of the probability that you can have to win it, you really have to increase your probability, which involves bringing in everyone who can support you from previous generations. They might not support you. It doesn't mean that you're going to find the same number of people in a Gen Z or millennial, but at the same time, it's still important that you are bringing everyone in. So another thing that we're doing, right, is, for example, something called fixed politics, and that one is cross-generational. And the idea of that is, listen, we can talk about like one particular issue that's going on in Nigeria, or we can realize that the issue with Nigeria is that we have the way we decide our leaders is broken. And those leaders get to decide whether we literally live or die. We've seen that in the last month, and it's important that we are we're then very intentional about thinking about how we can redesign that system through which we bring our leaders in. And that system is a political system. So now something like fixed politics, what it does is that we're bringing in people from every generation and saying, how do we, in different ways, look at how we can fix politics, whether it's by empowering the electorate, whether it's by looking at how we can change those rules, those regulations, the constitutional things that they've put in place to ensure that they're always going to be there. Whether it's by changing the rules for INEC, for example, and co. Whether it's by creating a new generation of political leaders, right? In the millennial generation, in the Gen Z, in the previous one, who are willing
you're breaking up.
To lead differently. So those are some.
Okay, perfect. So thank you so much for your perspectives, everyone. This has been interesting so far. So one last question, one final question before we go. I think a huge part of planning for the future is admitting that it won't be easy, right? And preparing for the kind of challenges we know that we are certain to face, right? This is not one of the things we get to just be optimistic about. We have to employ a certain level of healthy pessimism and kind of expect the worst and prepare for it too. So in what ways do you think, guys, we need to prepare? I want to hear from every one of you. In what ways, what problems should we expect, and how can we position for victory? Maybe not victory, but for some level of traction in the direction of those problems that we're certain to face.
So I will just be quick. I don't know. I'll just speak first so that others can speak, because I feel like they will have more to say. So mine is just going to be short. So number one, we have to realize that we have power. We know that we're strong with sensors. We can see, even though we did not get the expected result, but we realized that at that point in time, there was love. Everyone loved each other. It was just one hit. Again. So we realize that we have power and we can do this if we set out to do it. Yeah, we have terrible governments, no doubt. Are they ready to listen to us? We don't know. But we have power with us. So we should utilize, I won't say don't back out. Don't give up. Let's go back to the streets. That is not even the way out. That is not the way to go. But let's keep talking about it.
Yeah. Well, he said it was going to be short, so I think the network listened to him and just.
Okay, so if he's not coming on, then I say this. So first things first, I think our mindset needs to change. I think we have a lot of rehabilitation to do mentally and psychologically, because the honest truth of the matter is, we are a nation filled with different generations. The Gen Z has I feel like the Gen Z has a better mindset towards change than other generations. However, there's still some minute things that we have to work on. A very good example is things as little as breaking very tiny laws. Don't litter the streets. Make sure you try your best not to take one way. We need to be more cautious about these things, because I feel like we're not as cautious as we are supposed to be. So when I say our mindset needs to change, it needs to change. Like, we have to do a lot of mopping and cleaning when it comes to our mindsets, because I think the state of affairs in the nation has demoralized and destroyed people's mindsets. So now everyone is comfortable in doing things wrong. And when you even try to correct them, they're like, hey, is that not what everyone is doing?
Yeah.
So, I was talking to my aunt the other day about nepotism in the federal government's parastatals, and she said something that yes, there's bias, but it is the system. The system is dipped into bias, and you have to know how to work your way using the bias as a tool. So these are the minute mindsets we need to change. We need to get rid of these things. Another thing is human resources. So anyone who knows me knows that I am very particular about human resources. I keep saying it. If your human resources are not in place, then your minimum resources cannot work out, because it's the human beings that will build whatever it is that is there. If you don't teach someone how to fish, they can never feed themselves. So you need to teach them these things. So we need to develop our human resources. I mean, we have people who are fantastic and they end up going abroad, and then governments abroad take them in and begin to use them as part of their human resources to develop their minimal resources. And then at the end of the day, they use that to develop infrastructure. I know a lot. I mean, there was my sister's friend who is a medical doctor. He was doing some research on genetics. He offered it to the Nigerian government. They said they do not have the funds for that. And then the Canadian government took him in, and now he's flying all over the world to test his research, to develop his research. They give him everything he needs, a house, car, every single thing. So human resource is something that we need to develop. It's something that we need to work on. Education, educate the populace is very important. Education is something that it is extremely important. I mean, abroad, they don't necessarily have to get to university, but till SS3 is perfect. And then afterwards, you can put them into vocations for them to learn. Now, the next thing I'll also say is equality. About 160 trillion US dollars is being lost in the world in general due to the fact that women are not enough in the workforce due to gender inequality. Now, this equality is not just gender inequality, it's also ethnic equality, tribal equality. I'm Hausa, I'm Edo, and I'm Yoruba. That is a great me. And it has been able to show me all sides of Nigeria. I have a lot of Igbo friends around me. It has been able to show me all sides of Nigeria. And I feel like when we're able to put aside our tribalistic views, I mean, I go on Twitter and sometimes I see them insulting Arewa Twitter, and I know that yes, the Northerners have their own that needs to be changed. As a Northerner, I'm saying it, that there are things that need to be corrected in Northern Nigeria. But there are also things that need to be corrected in Southern Nigeria. And instead of pointing hands, it's better for us to bring forth solutions. How can we change these things? How can I work on this? How can we help Arewa to change? How can we help Northern Nigeria to change? How can we help Southern Nigeria to change? There needs to be even development amongst all sides of the country. Because the honest truth of the matter is, if this country should divide the way everybody wants it, if this country should separate the way everybody wants it, then it's going to bring about another civil war. And trust me, I don't believe that Gen Z is ready for that. I don't believe we have survival instincts like our parents do. I cannot survive in such a situation. I definitely cannot. So I believe that another thing is equality in all phases, tribal, gender, and all of that. And lastly, I think we need to utilize the things that we have around us. We need to utilize our resources appropriately. I feel like one thing I would definitely say is, I feel like the Gen Z utilizes their resources, but at the same time, I think that it's a tad bit wasteful. It's a tad bit wasteful in the sense that I think the Gen Z utilizes their resources, but at the same time, I feel like it's a tad bit wasteful. It's a tad bit wasteful in the sense that you see, Gen Z, we are naturally financially independent. We strive for financial independence, and that is why you see someone who is, I study law, I'm currently in my final year, but at the same time, I have my hands dipped into 5 different things I'm doing just to bring in money for myself. Not because my parents can't afford to, take care of me, not because they can't afford all my needs, but because I want to be able to have that financial independence. It brings about self-fulfillment for me. And I find that a lot of Gen Z are like that. So you see that at the end of the day, we work so hard, we gain so much financial independence, only to spend it on frivolous things. I mean, I see girls who work so hard and then they're spending their money on things that I'm like, sis, why don't you just pump it back into a business? Why don't you do investments? So I think that we utilize our resources, but then we're also wasteful about the produce that it brings about. So we need to utilize our resources and the produce that we get from it. Because many times we speak about utilizing resources, but we never really speak about how to also utilize the profits that we get after utilizing our resources.
Yeah.
So that
Thank you so much.
that is what I have.
Thank you so much, Halimat. So guys, you need to keep it really short. We're like out of time, but just real quick, final contributions.
So okay, final contributions.
Yeah.
I had a lot to say about animals, but so I'm going to regarding the question, I'm going to just go back to the topic. Will Gen Z fail where succeed where we failed? So having cleared the fact that there is where we failed and where we succeeded, do I think they will succeed where we failed? Yes, I do think so. But there are two conditions to that. Number one, the question is how well will they succeed where we failed? Number two, what is our part to play? Because we can't just sit idle and wait for them to succeed. I feel like pretty much what Halima has said. The fact that we don't know our history. I try to read it up now, but when I was in school, I'm like, history is an elective. I really don't need my history teacher right now. That shouldn't be the case. If you want to really solve things, you have to go to the foundation. History should not be something you drop because you're a science student. That shouldn't be, as in, it shouldn't even be a question. History should even be considered for a course, as a course in WAEC, right? And I think we should start from those basic principles to say, what exactly, why aren't we having 3 trash bins outside our gates, one for plastic, one for, recyclables? Like, we have to start thinking like that. And if we have a really good system, a really fundamentally good system from the root, then we can leave something for the Gen Z to say, yes, you can succeed based on the foundation we've set.
Thank you so much.
So I'm going to keep it
Final
really
word
short.
from me.
Oh, I haven't spoken, but I'm just going to do a very quick wrap up of what everyone has said. And I'm going to do it using a framework that we use to design everything that we design. The first step is to slow down, and we spoke about it a lot already. And when you slow down, you're able to see everything. You're able to think more strategically. You're able to learn from all the previous generations. The next step is for you to give gratitude. Gratitude means that you're able to learn history, right, which is important. Gratitude means you're able to look at the resources that you have, like Halimat had talked about, right? Gratitude means you're able to see the diversity of ethnicity and religion and see it as a blessing instead of a curse. The third step is for you to then take responsibility, which Halima already also mentioned in one way or the other, right? Which is, first of all, in our generation, how are we ensuring that we're not trashing the place? How are we doing things that show that we're able to take responsibility, and then when given power, we're able to utilize that power? You do that, you slow down, you give gratitude, and you take responsibility. Apply that throughout your life, irrespective of whatever generation you're in, and you will succeed. That's all.
Thank you so much. Pamela, you had one last thing to say, I think.
And I said it before and I will repeat it again. We have to come together to do this. Our generation can't do this alone. Collaboration matters and it's very important. The moment we realize that, the better for each and every one of us. Great.
All right. Thank you guys so much for taking the time. This has been a very interesting session. I hope we meet some other place for some other reasons. I look forward to it. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.